All right, so here we're going to talk a little bit about the nature of a sacred space, holy places, and the role of myth and ritual in religion. So, first of all, what is it that even makes a space sacred, that gives people a sense of this particular place is somehow holy, is somehow spiritual? Well, it's something that is discovered by people, right? They sort of experience something special about a certain place, and then that will get embellished. It will get developed in various ways, and then even later on can be recreated. So it's a place that isn't just that people whimsically choose, but rather it's something that's revealed to people. They end up kind of experiencing something special about a certain place. And there's a sense of mystery, foreboding, a sense of special power, special presence. And as a whole, it's sort of a sense that this is a connection to the other world, that this can be like a portal that connects you to these spiritual dimensions. And there's a common saying amongst pagans and whatnot that the veil between the worlds is thinnest in this place. That which separates the physical from the spiritual, that barrier, that wall, is very thin and transparent in this spot. So there's a sense of more of immediate connection between heaven and earth, the living and the dead, the past and the future, and the spiritual and the physical. Okay, there's something special. So people get a sense of impression, some kind of experience here that gives them this sense of somehow a special presence or power. And then usually around that, on an experiential level, they then will build an altar that eventually will define and create a sacred space around it. Okay. And so what's very common is that there'll be some kind of mark to set it apart from the mundane, some kind of boundary, something that will be tangibly created here to set it apart in some way. And otherwise, it's very important because it's how it can be dangerous to unknowingly, crash into this place, trespass it in a sense, and kind of offend the power, the energy, the holiness of the place. It's potentially dangerous. Oops. And so this is why, there's always a sense of boundaries created. And often there's an idea of creating magical boundaries. So a boundary will be created around this holy place to keep the profane out, that which is not holy out. Okay. And that you, to enter into this holy place, you need to prepare yourself through ritual. All right, through maybe cleansing, ritual ablutions, using water, earth, salt, fire, what have you, but some sense of cleansing. So you come into this holy place pure, right? And that is for your own well-being, for your own protection, and also for blessing, spiritual blessing. So it's very common that magical rituals would be done to even protect, this holy place, the boundary around it, from any kind of intrusion of evil influences. So you yourself need to be pure before you enter in, but also, oftentimes there'd be some kind of ritual done to protect this holy place from any kind of harm or evil. And so, in fact, cities, in ancient cities, they built walls, obviously, all over the place, right? Of course, to protect from war and attack from people. But they also often did magical rituals to keep out dangerous elements, that these walls also were a physical representation of a spiritual wall or boundary to protect the people from dangerous things like a spirit of disease, okay, or any kind of spiritual attack. There is also sort of this magical component of creating a circle of protection around the city. And so you also have this again around holy places. And what we find very common throughout the world is that various holy places and temples and whatnot, they are usually seen as representing and being connected in deeper way to the universe at large. That they're almost like a miniature version of the universe, a microcosm that's intimately connected with the larger universe out there, the macrocosm. Okay. And that somehow here in this holy place. It's sort of like the center of the world. And there's a lot of references to like a type of cosmic mountain or a ladder to heaven, that this is what this is the spot where you can climb up to get to the upper world of the gods. That there's this intimate connection. So it's sort of the meeting place, connecting earth and heaven, the spiritual and the physical, this world and the other world. Right? And that this holy place here is a type of access point connecting these realms. So, for example, the ancient city of Babylon, which was very famous in the ancient world, the word itself literally meant doorway of the gods. And the way a lot of those temples were built, if you've seen in a previous video, the ziggurats, it's like you're literally climbing up the stairs to heaven. So each creation of a temple, even at times the building of your home or the building of an altar, was usually seen as actually an imitation of the original creation of the world. All right. And so it becomes a symbol. All right. The home, the temple becomes a symbol for the larger universe. And this is really quite prevalent when you look at various Hindu Buddhist temples in the city of Jerusalem, the city of Mecca, and the city of Babylon, say in terms of the Middle Eastern region. They're all seen as being the center of the universe. And that's what made them so holy. They were at the portal that connected heaven and earth. Okay. So just some examples. Hang on here, I want to make sure nothing. Okay, so many ancient cities were, centers of the universe, of the cosmos, not just a temple complex represented the cosmic center, but the city as a whole was also connected to the heavens and reflected in various ways. And so cities were built around this idea. So the classic example that we still see today here is in Peru, the capital city of Cuzco. That the very center of it, sort of like the navel, the cosmic center in the middle, and there is the temple of the sun. And the four quarters of the city represents the four directions. And in the past, they were guarded by four families that provided spiritual protection, guarding, in a sense, this is the hub of the universe. Likewise, we found such cases in ancient Tibet and Celtic Britain. Where you'd have 8 families for the 4 directions, and then in between the 4 directions that were of the nobility that were responsible for guarding all the directions of the city, and was held to be very sacred, the sense of holiness about it. And again, it was correlated, sort of mirrored heaven and the universe at large. So, these things have really died off, obviously, but these were quite central in most ancient times. Another example is a Buddhist temple at Borobudur in the 9th century, a very important place of Buddhist pilgrimage. And as you can see, it's very huge. It's one of the largest, it is the largest Buddhist temple in the world. And as you climb up the stairs, it's like you're climbing up through the different levels of the universe, going through the major cosmic realms, all right? This world of desire into the world of form, and then eventually to the world of formlessness, as sort of like your journey to nirvana, which is up on top at the heart and center. And so it kind of, embodies the human journey in a larger scale, but also the universe in nature as how it is. And so these buildings and whatnot, and the way they constructed the cities, it was to keep in mind the true nature of reality, that the spiritual aspect of reality, that is the truth that you may not see physically, but it is very real. And they would try to take that which is spiritual and create physical forms of it, so that you'd be able to integrate the spiritual into your everyday living. That you'd always remember, who you are, what this is all about, what the human journey is, that is fundamentally at its core a spiritual one, right? This is really what we've so lost, in the modern world. Another example is use of labyrinths, and this is what you find a lot in the West. Right, but also beyond that. It's often not known what they all meant for different societies. But in Christian Middle Ages, okay, we can even have some labyrinths here locally. They were built in cathedrals to sort of be a type of inner pilgrimage, that as you walk through the labyrinth, in meditation and prayer, it is like you are taking, in a miniature version, you're taking on the spiritual journey, which is, again, a larger journey, but you're incorporating it in a smaller scale here and now by doing it as, kind of a meditative walk. It embodies the larger journey of life. And it is a spiritual one of getting connected to the core center, which is spiritual, right? That gets integrated. So it's very much a shamanic type of thing of journeying almost to the spirit world, journeying to the spiritual dimension of reality. But it's an inner journey that you do as you do this walk. It's been internalized. So we have these sort of labyrinths in the West. But it seems, again, the human journey is a spiritual one. And people have been always trying to create tangible physical means of making that real in the human experience, right? Real in people's everyday lives in some way. Okay. Oops. And so we also find, that in terms of holy places, they're places that are perceived to be places of power. Right? And so there can be all kinds of legends associated with holy places, legends about, the various gods, that this is the place where this god was born or this event happened. You'll find a lot of that, say, over in India with various Hindu temples. They'll have various legends and stories associated with them. So they all then, kind of become places of spiritual power with their stories that are associated. And what's interesting here is just here the legends of, the slaying of dragons in the West. And that's correlated with the idea that there's sort of this energy in the universe, this dragon type energy that held to be like in China, there are dragons in the earth, these ley lines of energy fields under the earth. And so that in some of these cathedrals, there'd be a position there, a certain kind of spot where it's marked that a spear gets anchored into that as part of the ground to capture that energy, and that energy and power be solidly stationed there to become the foundation then for the building of a holy place. And that's something that people don't realize, but that's something that developed in medieval times, that sort of idea. So anyways, you have this idea always is that these are places of power, spiritual energy is at play here. And what also symbolizes aspects of this that we find in India and the Indian tradition is the use of mandalas and yantras. And they're very closely related. A mandala is a symbolic representation of the universe, which is on the lower right. That's a classic kind of Tibetan mandala. And they symbolize the whole of the universe. Okay, all the different aspects of the universe that you would meditate upon, so that you sort of, in a sense, would become almost like one with the universe. And a yantra, which is up above there, it embodies the energetic frequency, okay, that is essential to reality in various ways. And there are different kinds of yantras associated with various Hindu deities, okay, that you would meditate upon. And that as you meditate upon, you're kind of tuning into those frequencies that are embedded, sort of encoded in the symbolism at play here. It's like, almost tied in with mathematics in ways that it's an encoding of an energetic frequency in there, that as you meditate upon that, you're accessing that type of energy. And so say you'd have one that's associated with the goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and success and prosperity. And so to meditate on that yantra and to say the right mantras, the words of power of the right frequency that correlate with the energetic embodiment encoded in the yantra. And as you do that in a meditation and chanting, you're tuning into that frequency to access that particular energy. So these are, again, tools that are related to holy places. They're containers and portals through which you connect with these higher dimensions, these spiritual realities and dimensions. Okay. And so people throughout time have kind of created various forms of accessing, right, the spiritual. And it's again and again, it's held that the spiritual is the most primary reality, the most fundamental reality behind this physical world. And it's imperative to be connected with that. So the meaning of sacred places here is that these holy places, they are a place in a sense of salvation, a way of you connecting with these spiritual realities and powers. And as you connect with these spiritual realities and powers, that then will bring to you renewal, forgiveness, cleansing, release from negative things, and being reborn, rebirthed, all right, re-energized. Getting empowered once again as you've gotten weakened and worn out by life, to get guidance and fresh inspiration, to be blessed, to receive spiritual blessings and empowerment and healing, right? And more success and prosperity and hope and fulfillment. I mean, all the juicy good stuff. Okay. And this is a key thing. It's a place of connecting with these spiritual realities and energies. And so in a sense, it's like returning always to the Garden of Eden, that paradise that was lost, that sense of, life is meant to be better than this. It's meant to be perfect. It's meant to be blissful. It's meant to be abundant with full of good things. And we're not meant to struggle and find it hard and get worn out and get tired, get broken, get wounded, get crushed by life, right? All those negative kind of things. And it's like the human on the journey, is like on a pilgrimage, needs to return to that Garden of Eden, to return to that paradise, to get renewed, all right, revitalized, restored, all right. And that's really at a deeper level what's going on here, what's meant to go on. So it's sort of the human journey, right? All this is, it just reflects the whole quest, the search for this higher reality we call the spiritual, that is indeed the source of reality and the source of life that we want to connect with. And a sense that therein lies the power, the juice of life. It's the heart of the universe. And it's like coming home to one's origins, to one's destiny, to what was meant to be the very source of life. And that getting tapped into, that brings renewal, revival, salvation, right? And so it's always like a journey to the temple, right? Or a holy place is like a journey back to being reborn, to being rejuvenated, to reconnect with the source of all that is, that brought you life to begin with. Okay. So again, that's, I think ideally how it should be seen as to what's really going on here. And so this is why then a temple, so to speak, and the various holy places can be a mirror image. Okay, they're seen as like a physical representation here on earth of, excuse me, that other dimension, that other world, that other realm that humans have always longed for, have a sense that that's where we truly belong. And we're just here temporarily. Okay. And so the mystics hold that the true sanctuary, the true temple is always internal. It's in the heart. It's an inner journey of spirit, that the Holy of Holies is actually an inward journey, okay, in your soul. But yet the outer journey, going to the temple, is a physical embodiment and reflection and symbol of what really is meant to happen on the inside. Is meant to support that inner journey, that you connect internally to spirit, okay, at the level of soul. So you have this dance between the inner and outer. And for some, they don't need to make that journey to the temple anymore, because they've got that connection so strongly established already through their spiritual practice that it's already there, anchored within. And so there isn't so much the need to do the outer journey of going to a holy place. Okay. But again, yeah, there's room for both, all right? It's to get to that place, you probably had to do the outer journey. You had to go to these holy places. And as you are on that journey of spiritually connecting to that higher reality, then less and less will you have need for these outer physical tools to connect you to the spiritual. Hopefully that makes some sense. Okay. Now, what we also find here in the history of religion, tied in with holy places, is the role of myth and ritual. And so this is always in this sort of standard discussion about the nature of religion. And so the word myth comes from the Greek word mythoi, which means stories. And it's a particular type of literary genre, and they're basically stories about the gods. Okay. And these stories then become paradigms. They provide then kind of models of reality, maps of life, guidance for us to follow, principles to follow. They are very important for teaching us about reality, about how life works and what it's all about. So as a Hindu text says, thus did the gods do, and thus too human beings will do. Okay. It's sort of like a role model. It explains why things are the way they are and why we should live the way we live or should live. So today, history functions to provide the grand narrative of the human journey for most people, defining our roots, ancestry, our sense of identity, providing meaning to events. But putting things in context here throughout time, religion through their stories, their myths, have provided the grand narrative, all right, as to who we are and what it's all about. And so these stories are account of the origins of the universe, cosmogonies, how things came into being, all right, how we got here, why we're here, as well as where we're going. What is our destiny? What's our future? Eschatologies, right? So the beginnings and the endings, and then the meaning in between, right? They provide us those narratives about life and our sense of identity, who we are and where we're going and what it's all about. And so they use symbolism, okay, predominantly, and in terms of the language that's used, and they tend to be very authoritative in religious traditions. And they're primarily ontological in the sense they explain the why and how of things, defining the fundamental essence of things, the nature of things, the beingness of things. Okay. Yeah, that's sort of what sets it apart from history, which provides us a lineage of factual events, that this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened, right? That's what you get in history. You get dates and times and names and places, but myths is telling us why, what it means, what is the essence of things, the nature of things. Okay. That's their nature. That's what myths are. Okay. Oops, where am I here? Okay, hang on here. There we go. Okay. So the nature of myths, they're primarily trans-historical. They go beyond history. Okay. Generally, the events described in myths are outside of time and of some other place. And they generally talk about realities in that other world, of that other sacred dimension, the spiritual dimension, that which is beyond time but is eternal, bringing us truths that go beyond time and are valid across time. Okay, they're primordial. So it's very much in contrast to what we think of this physical world and the sense of time in this physical world in terms of history, right? Which is just transient and it's temporary. It's this day versus that day. But in the other realm, it's the eternal realm. It's across time. These are truths that are always applicable, always in a more fundamental, eternal way, right? So the realm of myth is held to be the realm of the real. Okay, it's what's ultimate. It's what's true with a capital T. It doesn't get undermined by historical change and historical events. In fact, historical events are often just a repeat of these more fundamental truths that exist at the realm of myth, right? And that's where archetypes come in, archetypal realities. You'll find, like, for example, well, the classic example, and probably the most powerful one really, is the whole Christ event of God who became man, that was sacrificed, put to death, crucified, and then raised from the dead. Right? The whole kind of sacrificial element here of death and rebirth. That is something so universal, trans-historical, but yet it shows up in history in various ways again and again, right? And so that's kind of the nature of myth, is that these are truths that are so powerful that they will replay itself in history time and time again. And so you'll see patterns that show up, that repeat time and time again. And that's where, Joseph Campbell, he developed the hero's journey, because you have similar patterns in these stories. These are the patterns that show up in movies all the time. They're regular patterns in human experience. And they have their origins in this more trans-historical level of reality, in the realm of the sacred, in, if you want to go, I don't know what to call it, but I like to call them archetypal realm. It's sort of the source of a lot of this. So anyways, let me just read. The realm of myth is the realm of the real, whereas this world, the profane, is rather unreal. It's always temporary and changing. Okay, it's really just a playing out of these patterns that exist at the realm of myth. And so the goal of myth or religion is to bring this profane existence to participate in the realm of the real, for us to consciously engage that with awareness. Okay, and then as you do that, it transforms the meaning of our everyday physical experience, that it isn't just useless, transient, meaningless events, but as you consciously engage the spiritual while you're in the physical, that then raises it up to connect with the spiritual and gives it more that overriding universal meaning and value. Okay, that's often what's really going on here. So as I mentioned, this is where, archetypal realities play an important role. They represent realities and truths that are fundamentally trans-historical in nature, but they manifest in history as well, kind of in a repetitive way. And as you consciously engage them, right, that's the key, is to consciously engage them. That's what Carl Jung held, that there'll be ways where through conscious awareness and working with those realities, it can have profoundly healing, transformative effect. It's so hard to describe. I'm really kind of getting off on tangents here on this. But there's really profound stuff going on here that's huge, all right, that I'm just really not able to get into right here. But they all indicate that the essence behind the physical realities as forms is of another psychological, spiritual nature that will show up time and again in various ways. And that's a key thing. And this is kind of what Plato was getting at. You've got the higher level of reality, what we could call the spiritual, where things exist as patterns of energies, as a form of essence, and they then will manifest in physical forms in historical time. And therefore, they'll show up again and again, maybe different names at different time periods in history, but very similar patterns that keep repeating and showing up. Okay, so those are the forms that manifest historically, physically on Earth, but they're embodiments, manifestations of something, of another dimension, of a higher realm, as essence, that I largely look at or see as energetic patterns of what characteristics and fields, that is a type of consciousness, attributes, characteristics, like, the hero kind of image, or the Joker kind of image. These are archetypes. You'll have like a joker, the hero, the ruler, the lover. These are, again, just as human beings, certain kind of archetypal figures. And those patterns of characteristics, they're really quite universal, but they'll take on concrete forms in history through particular people or in particular deities, and they'll play out their dynamics in similar stories again and again, this way or that way. Okay. But yet they're embodiments of these trans-historical kind of, I like to think of them more like energies. All right. And that's what we're often dealing with when we do comparative religion. When you study different religious traditions and different stories and whatnot, you'll have similar things showing up time and again. Okay, so Joseph Campbell was very well known in his talking about myth, and he's the one that talked a lot about the hero's journey. I don't think I was going to maybe put that in here, but I didn't. Anyway, he talks about there are 4 primary functions of myth. First of all, there's the mystical role and function of myth. It allows us then, through these stories, to connect with the great mystery of life that's fundamentally beyond our comprehension. You're connecting with the spiritual that's beyond comprehension. Then secondly, there's these stories also can provide a map of the universe cosmologically, in terms of telling us how did we get here, where we're going, why we're here, what it's all about. Okay, so they provide sort of a map of life for us here, okay, and the meaning of things. Sociological, they also provide a map of just who we are in the social scheme of life, that, the such and such a person is the ruler and the king, this person is the servant, or this one's the joker. Like, you have these kind of sociological aspects. And then psychologically, they also help us in making transitions in life. They can help us with finding meaning, a sense of identity, empowerment, in terms of major changes in the human journey and the life journey as an individual. And so they allow us then to participate, in the greater drama of the journey of humanity, okay, as individuals. Okay, we kind of are part of this larger collective drama. So they play various levels of impact for me as an individual, for how we fit in society, how we fit in with the universe in terms of how we got here, where we're going in terms of the big picture, and then something beyond that, just the mystery of it all, which is, again, just connection with that spiritual source. And so rituals are always used here in the history of religion. We'll find rituals, they are the means by which we then participate in these sacred realities, okay, in these spiritual realities. So because, as I mentioned way back in terms of just the nature of religion, that rituals are symbolic gestures, as I have at the very bottom paragraph here. Ritual is an act of communication through outer symbolic gestures that convey inner intentions, feelings, thoughts, right? And they define how we are relating to the spiritual, okay, the sacred, the religious community, the world, the universe, that should have an L in there, the world, and even to our own selves. Okay, they're a way of how we connect, all right, and relate. And so, bodily postures, holding your hands in a certain position. It's a symbolic gesture. It conveys my intention of seeking to, quote, pray, talk to a particular deity, okay, calling upon God for this or that, or giving thanks to God for this or that, right? It's reflecting my intention of connecting and relating to the spiritual in some way. Okay, so there are means by which we participate in these spiritual realities. So both directly through, worship and prayers and magical rituals and whatever, we're directly participating in spiritual realities, or more indirectly as we kind of engage some of the stories and traditions here. Stories that then are the basis of certain holy days, the basis of certain festivals and celebrations, okay? Stories that are the basis of going on a pilgrimage to a holy place, Okay, that's how we're participating in spiritual realities, in the sense that we are going on this journey to Mecca to worship Allah at Mecca, for example, during the Hajj, right? It's I'm participating in it through these actions, physical actions, and yet it's how I'm trying to connect through this to quote God, so to speak. Okay. So there's a set of actions and behaviors, usually of a patterned nature and often repetitive, but they have usually a deep sense of meaning and fundamentally have a spiritual purpose. And that spiritual purpose is in some way connecting with the spiritual realities in some way. So there's three primary elements in ritual. They always have a sacred context, okay? They require a proper setup. There's sort of planning, there's proper tools that are used, the right people involved, and it's a particular place, a particular time, it has its purpose, okay? So there's the overall religious context for the ritual, okay? That's all set up and laid out. Then the second key element is connecting with the spiritual. Okay, the goal is always to connect with quote, the sacred, making that spiritual become present to the people, that there's a meeting, a happening, a connecting between the human and the divine. Okay, so you need to basically tune out this world, this physical, mundane world, tune that out so you can tune in to the spiritual. Okay, so there's intended to be a connection happening, right? Then the third thing is this is meant to then result in some kind of a transformation. The goal is some kind of experience, an experiential transformation of some kind for healing, to kind of get realigned, getting right again with God, that, oh, God has forgiven my sins and now I'm right again with God, re-energized, revitalized, just feeling a deeper connection that gives me hope and strength, whatever it is that's needed. Okay, it effects a transformation for individuals and maybe even as a social group. And it can even help, like, hey, it's meant to bring a transformation for the larger ecosystem. You know, we pray that God will send the rain so the crops will grow, okay? And to prevent a disaster, that the comet won't hit the planet Earth or something, okay? It can have even larger effect. Oops. And so then you also have various other specific kind of rituals, life cycle rituals of various kinds. Is very all over the world you find that. Rituals to commemorate the various stages of life, you know, the birth of a baby and the naming of that child, or when they entering into puberty and adulthood, some kind of confirmation rituals or bar mitzvahs and things like that, marriage rituals, death rituals, various rituals to address the changes that we go through in our life journey. Okay, they always involve religious rituals here, and that help us make the shift, that sense of identity. And it's always done in a spiritual context. I mean, this is one thing, you know, for us modern people, we fail to realize how strong and pervasive religion has been in the history of humanity. It was always first and foremost primary in human consciousness. Okay, and that's something we've lost touch with in our society today. Then you also have crisis rituals, and that is rituals that deal with a specific need. You know, some kind of issue has come about. Somebody's sick, so they need healing. Somebody has been cursed. We need to remove the curse and bring blessing. Perhaps an evil spirit needs to be removed. There's an exorcism that needs to happen. Or to get rid of a drought, make sure the crops will grow and there's fertility in the land. There's some kind of a need, all right, that is taking place. And there's a ritual then to meet the need. And here would also be included divination, getting guidance, getting kind of spiritual inspiration, revelation guidance as to what direction to take, what you should do. Okay. Then there are calendar rituals. And these are often associated with the movement in nature. All right, these are sort of like ecological calendars where, you know, with the movement of the sun or the moon from winter to summer and what have you, tied in with the solstices, equinoxes, fertility of the land, the harvesting that takes place, rituals that are always done in alignment with the movement of the planets and the sun and all that. And so you'll find various rituals celebrated throughout the world along those lines. Okay, and this is one in Thailand, the Festival of Lanterns, that always takes place in November. And this here sort of at Stonehenge, but Stonehenge being very ancient, tied in with the movement of the planets and the solstices and whatnot. Okay, oops. Then we also have calendar rites of a liturgical nature. And so here, these are rituals that are tied into the history of a particular religion and the history of a particular people. And therefore, they're associated with particular holy days, and they commemorate particular events. So here we've got specific holy days in different religions. So going on a Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca at the Kaaba there that you can see. We've got, like almost like 2 million people going there. And here, this is the one remaining wall in Jerusalem, the Western Wall, where the Jews will go to pray, especially one day a year where they go there to mourn the destruction of the temple. That's one of their holy days, okay, where they commemorate that. So you'll have these sorts of rituals done. Well, also is quite universal were sacrificial rituals. I mean, this we find all over the world, which we've already talked a bit about elsewhere. Basically, the rule has always been if I give to the gods, that thou may give back. Okay, it's sort of an exchange, a ritual of exchange. Sacrifices offered to the gods. It's like a form of bribery that the gods are appeased by the offering of gifts. Okay, I give to you, so you give back to me. So in a Vedic ritual, it states, here is the butter as an offering to the gods. So where are thy gifts? Okay, gods, give us back your gifts here. I give this to you, you give it to me. So you have this sense of exchange going on, but it also is the sharing of food. There's a communal meal that happens. So the food is offered to the gods, but then you also then feast with the gods. And as you share the meal, okay, sharing of the food that was offered to the gods, right? There's then an energetic bond formed. It's held, you'll receive the blessings of the gods as you partake of that food. It's like the energy from the gods kind of comes into the food, and that energy gets passed on to you. So in many primal cultures, to not receive gifts or not to give any gifts is seen as an act of war. It's a way of rejecting any kind of communal connection. And so through the offering of sacrifices, so to speak, and the giving of gifts, okay, is held that when that gift is given, a portion of the giver is in it. It's almost like a part of their energy, their soul or mana is in that gift. And so as I eat of this food and receive that gift, and I also give back, there's this exchange that happened, it creates an energetic link, an energetic bond or tie here, okay? And so here, and you have economics at its very origins. It's seen as a magical act of forging bonds between giver and receiver, right? That they are then linked and connected together. And yeah, this is still very prevalent today, all this stuff. Then we also have renewal rituals. And it's held that life, is a constant dance of energy, and that the origins of the universe as it's created, coming from the source, all this life and energy, that over time, it can get contaminated, it can get polluted, corrupted, it can break down. What was in order goes into chaos. It can become harmful, stagnant, or fade away. So there's a sense that there's always a need to restore things back to that original primal source, to purify it once again, remove that dirt, the sin, the contaminants, any kind of dark, destructive energies that are interfering with it, all right? Creating a decoherence, spirit intrusions, stagnation, things going into chaos. It gets broken down, things get blocked, the energies get blocked, okay? There's a hindrance to the flow of energy, the flow of life, so that your life force and power is robbed or you're pulled off track, right? So there's a sense that you always need to kind of get renewed, recharged, revitalized, get all this negative stuff cleared out, all the blocks removed, okay? So you have quite universal, are various rituals of purification and renewal, from daily cleansing before prayer or going into a temple holy place. There's cleansing rituals, New Year rituals, spring rituals. They're all kind of around, renewing life and purifying things and bringing things back into full power, full energy, full coherence, back into pure order as how it was originally created. Okay, and removing all contaminants, right? And so very common is the use of water purification. Salt purifies. Smoke and fire purifies, right? Various herbs and things like that would purify. All right, all kinds of things are used here. Okay. Oh, so I think that's it. All right. Yeah, and so I will have here various videos that are useful to watch here of different aspects of all this as examples. Oops, that's all different stuff here. Okay. So that's it for today here on this, just to give you a bit of an overview of rituals and myth and holy places and some of the meaning behind some of these things. Okay.